The candles were already burning when Hazel walked outside, dozens of them, scattered across the frozen harvest field like fallen stars, their light turning the November darkness into something she didn't have words for. The entire town stood watching in silence, the same neighbors who'd spent years looking straight through her like she was furniture. And there was Cole Bennett, the man she'd loved in secret for half a decade, walking toward her through that sea of flame with tears on his face and her stolen journal pages clutched in his fist. She should have run, should have hidden, should have done anything except stand there while he came to break her heart all over again. But before we get to that night, before the field, before the truth, before everything shattered and rebuilt itself, you need to understand how Hazel Mercer became the woman nobody chose. If you're watching from somewhere in this world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Hazel's story travels. And stick around until the end, because what happens in that candlelit field? You won't see it coming. The winter storm hit Black Hollow Ridge on a Tuesday. Hazel was 23 years old, standing at the kitchen window of her family's farmhouse, watching snow pile against the fence posts like the world was trying to bury itself. Her hands were wrist-deep in bread dough, her third batch that week because her mother kept saying the church social needed more, always more. And Hazel never said no. She never said much of anything. "Hazel!" Her mother's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. "Stop staring out that window and finish those loaves. Clara needs help with her hair before supper." Clara, beautiful golden-haired Clara, who was 19 and had half the county's unmarried men showing up at Sunday service just to watch her smile. Clara, who never had to knead dough until her knuckles ached because she was too precious for kitchen work that might roughen her hands. Hazel turned back to the counter without answering. She'd learned young that answering back just made things worse. Learned that being the older sister, the heavier one, the plain one, meant your job was to make everyone else's life easier. Your dreams got smaller to make room for theirs. Your silence filled the spaces their laughter didn't reach. That was just how things were. But then the knock came. 3 solid raps against the front door, loud enough to rattle the hinges. Hazel's father was out checking the livestock, and her mother was upstairs fussing over Clara's dress. So Hazel wiped the flour from her hands and went to answer it herself. She opened the door and forgot how to breathe. Cole Bennett stood on the porch with an armload of split firewood, snow caught in his dark hair, and ice crusted on his shoulders. He was 6'3" of solid muscle, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved from the same granite as the ridge itself. He ran the biggest cattle ranch in the county, and every unmarried woman within 50 miles had tried to catch his attention at one point or another. He'd never looked twice at any of them. "Storm's getting bad," he said, his voice rough from the cold. "Saw your woodpile was low when I rode past earlier. Figured you could use some." Hazel stared at him like he was speaking a language she'd never learned. The word caught in her throat. "You didn't have to." "Wasn't any trouble." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, tracking snow across the floorboards her mother would yell about later. "Where do you want it?" She pointed toward the fireplace, still too stunned to form complete sentences. Cole crossed the room in 4 long strides and started stacking the wood with the easy efficiency of a man who'd been working with his hands since childhood. Hazel watched him from the doorway, her heart doing something complicated and painful in her chest. This was the first time Cole Bennett had ever been inside their house, the first time he'd ever really looked at her. "You do all the cooking around here?" he asked, nodding toward the bread dough on the counter. "Most of it." Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "Smells good." He finished stacking the wood and turned to face her fully. His eyes were the color of winter pine, green with shadows underneath. "You make those cinnamon rolls they sell at the church socials?" Hazel blinked. "How did you recognized your handwriting on the basket label last month?" Something that might have been a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Best thing I've eaten in years. Bought 3. Heat flooded her face. She'd written her name so small on that label she didn't think anyone would notice, didn't think anyone would care. But Cole Bennett had noticed. He'd noticed, and he'd remembered, and he was standing in her kitchen telling her about it like it mattered. "I could." She stopped, swallowed, forced herself to keep going. "I could make you some, if you wanted, to thank you, for the firewood." Cole studied her for a long moment, long enough that Hazel started wondering if she'd said something stupid, if she'd misread everything, If this was just him being neighborly and she'd made it weird by... I'd like that, he said quietly. And then Clara came down the stairs. Hazel heard it before she saw it. The soft rustle of skirts, the light footsteps, the way the air in the room seemed to shift and resettle around her sister's presence. Clara had that effect on spaces, on people. She walked into a room and everything reorganized itself around her like she was the sun, and the rest of them were just planets trying to stay in orbit. Oh! Clara stopped at the bottom of the stairs, one hand pressed to her chest in mock surprise. She was wearing her blue dress, the one that matched her eyes and made her waist look impossibly small. I didn't know we had company. Cole's attention slid away from Hazel like water off glass. Just like that, she stopped existing. Ma'am? He pulled his hat off, holding it against his chest. Cole Bennett. I was just dropping off some firewood. How kind of you. Clara drifted closer, and Hazel watched her sister transform into something soft and delicate and utterly captivating. I'm Clara Mercer. This is my older sister, Hazel. Older. She always said it like that, with just enough emphasis to make sure everyone understood the difference. Older, heavier, less. The one who did the cooking while Clara wore pretty dresses and smiled. We've met, Hazel said quietly. Nobody heard her. You must be frozen, Clara continued, tilting her head in that way that made men stupid. Would you like some coffee? Hazel makes wonderful coffee. Of course she did. Hazel made wonderful everything as long as it was something she could do in the kitchen while other people took the credit. I should get going, Cole said, but he didn't move toward the door. His eyes stayed locked on Clara like she was something rare and breakable. Storm's getting worse. Then you should definitely stay for coffee. Clara's smile could have melted the snow outside. I insist. And that was it. That was the moment Hazel felt something inside her chest crack open and start bleeding in a way that wouldn't stop for years. She made the coffee, served it in the good china her mother saved for company, watched Cole Bennett sit at their kitchen table and fall in love with her sister in real time, one smile at a time, while Hazel stood by the stove and pretended her hands weren't shaking. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Always with some excuse, checking on the firewood, bringing news from town, asking if they needed help with the livestock. But Hazel knew the truth. He came back for Clara. Everyone came back for Clara. 3 months later, Hazel was kneading bread dough again when her mother walked into the kitchen with that look on her face, the one that meant she was about to say something that would hurt and then act surprised when Hazel flinched. I saw you watching him yesterday, her mother said, not bothering with preamble. When he came to pick up Clara for that dance. Hazel's hand stilled in the dough. I don't know what you... Don't play stupid with me. Her mother's voice was sharp as a slap. You think I haven't noticed? The way you look at Cole Bennett like he hung the moon? Shame flooded through Hazel's body, hot and poisonous. She'd been so careful, so quiet. How had her mother... Let me make something very clear to you. Her mother stepped closer, lowering her voice to something almost gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. A man like that, successful, handsome, respected, he's going to choose someone who makes him look good, someone beautiful, someone like Clara. I know that. Hazel's voice barely made it past her throat. Do you? Her mother tilted her head, studying her like a problem that needed solving. Because you're nearly 24 years old, Hazel. You're not getting any younger, and you're not getting any prettier. If you keep wasting time mooning over men who'll never look at you, you're going to end up alone. The words landed like stones in deep water, silent, sinking, settling somewhere dark. There's a widower over in Timber Creek, her mother continued. Older man, 3 children, needs a housekeeper and a wife. He's asked about you. Hazel's stomach turned. She'd seen that man at church, 60 if he was a day, with mean eyes and hands that looked like they knew how to make bruises. I'm not interested. You don't have the luxury of being interested. Her mother's patience was wearing thin. You think you're going to get better offers? You think some young, handsome rancher is going to... She stopped abruptly, something like pity crossing her face. Honey, she said, and the gentleness in her voice was worse than any cruelty. I'm trying to help you understand how the world works. Clara is going to marry well. She's going to have a good life. But you You need to be practical. You need to take what you can get. Hazel looked down at the bread dough under her hands, soft and shapeless and waiting to be made into something useful. What if I don't want to? The words came out before she could stop them. Her mother laughed. Actually laughed, high and bright and dismissive. Want? Oh, sweetheart, you think wanting matters? You think Cole Bennett is going to suddenly realize you exist? That he's going to choose you over your beautiful baby sister? The question hung in the air like smoke. Hazel didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night she lay in bed and let herself imagine it anyway. Cole choosing her, Cole seeing her, Cole's rough hands gentle on her face, while he told her she was exactly what he'd been looking for all along. She let herself believe it for exactly 10 minutes, the way she did most nights, before reality came crashing back and reminded her that some women got chosen and some women did the choosing, and she'd never been the kind of pretty that made men forget which was which. 6 months later, Clara married Cole Bennett in the small church at the edge of town. Hazel stood in the back serving coffee and cake to guests who didn't know her name. She watched her sister float down the aisle in a white dress like something out of a fairy tale, watched Cole look at Clara like she was the only woman in the world, watched her mother cry happy tears and her father beam with pride. Nobody asked Hazel how she felt. Nobody asked Hazel anything. She smiled when people talked to her, said congratulations when they asked, went home alone while everyone else danced at the reception, and told herself this was fine, this was expected, this was just how her life was going to be. The next morning, she woke up and made breakfast like nothing had changed, because for her, nothing had. Cole and Clara built a life together on his ranch, the kind of life that looked perfect from the outside. Clara wrote letters home about how wonderful everything was, how much she loved being a wife, how happy she was. She came to visit sometimes, always dressed beautifully, always glowing with that special light that came from being cherished. Hazel helped her mother prepare meals for those visits, listened to Clara talk about her life, smiled in all the right places. And every night, she went to bed in her childhood bedroom and reminded herself that this was what she deserved. This was what happened when you were plain and practical and too damn big to fit into the kind of life men like Cole Bennett wanted. 2 years passed like water through a sieve. Then Clara got pregnant. The whole family celebrated, gathered at the ranch for a big dinner where Clara showed off her small, neat baby bump, and Cole couldn't stop touching her shoulder, her hand, the small of her back. Protective and proud, and so clearly in love it made Hazel's teeth ache. She was washing dishes when Cole walked into the kitchen. "You don't have to do that," he said. "You're a guest." "I don't mind." She kept her eyes on the soapy water. "I like being useful." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Clara says you make the best apple pie in the county." Hazel's hands paused. "She said that?" "Talks about you a lot, actually. Says you're the smartest person she knows. Says when she was younger she wanted to be just like you." Something sharp twisted in Hazel's chest. She forced herself to keep scrubbing the plate in her hands. "Clara's always been kind." "It's not kindness if it's true." Hazel looked up then, found Cole watching her with an expression she couldn't read. For just a second, just one brief, impossible second, she let herself wonder what would have happened if he'd walked into their kitchen and seen her first. If Clara hadn't come down those stairs. If Hazel had been the one wearing the blue dress and the bright smile. But then Clara called from the other room, and Cole's attention shifted like it always did, and Hazel went back to the dishes with the particular kind of emptiness that came from almost moments that never quite became real. The baby came in early spring. A girl, small and perfect, with Cole's dark hair and Clara's blue eyes. They named her Eleanor Rose, but everyone called her Ellie. Hazel's mother insisted on visiting every week to help with the baby, and she dragged Hazel along because Clara needs her family right now. Hazel didn't argue. She never argued. She held Ellie while Clara napped, changed diapers and heated bottles, and walked circles around the ranch house while the baby fussed. And somewhere in those long, quiet afternoons, something unexpected happened. Ellie started reaching for her, not for Clara, not for the nanny they'd hired, for Hazel. "Hazy," Ellie babbled one day, her tiny fist wrapped around Hazel's finger. "Hazy, Hazy." Clara laughed from the doorway. "I think that's supposed to be Hazel. She's trying to say your name. Hazy." Ellie said again, more insistent this time, and something in Hazel's chest cracked open in a way that felt different from before. Not breaking, blooming. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her first, even if that someone was barely 2 years old. "She loves you," Clara said softly. There was something strange in her voice, something Hazel couldn't identify. "More than she loves me sometimes, I think." "That's not true, isn't it?" Clara moved closer, and Hazel realized her sister looked tired, really tired, the kind that went deeper than missed sleep. "You're so good with her, Hazel, so patient. I get frustrated when she cries, but you know exactly what to do." Hazel didn't know what to say to that. "Promise me something," Clara said suddenly, her hand gripping Hazel's arm with unexpected intensity. "If anything ever happens to me, if something goes wrong, promise you'll take care of her, not Mother. You." "Clara, nothing's going to—" "Promise me." There was something almost desperate in her sister's eyes, something that made Hazel's skin prickle with unease. "I promise," she said quietly. Clara relaxed, smiled. "Good. That's good." 3 weeks later, Clara was dead. The fever came on fast, burning through her body in less than 48 hours. The doctor said it was infection, something that happened sometimes after childbirth, something they couldn't stop even though they tried everything. Cole sent for Hazel's family in the middle of the night, and by the time they arrived, Clara was already unconscious. She died just before dawn. Hazel stood in the corner of the bedroom and watched Cole Bennett break into pieces over her sister's body. Watched him sob like a child. Watched him hold Clara's hand even after it went cold. Watched the kind of grief that came from losing the person you loved most in the world. And she felt nothing. Not relief, not vindication, not even sadness, really. Just a vast, echoing emptiness where emotion should have been, and a terrible guilt that she couldn't seem to cry when everyone else was drowning in tears. The funeral was 3 days later. The whole town showed up, packed the church until people were standing in the aisles. Everyone talked about what a tragedy it was, how young Clara had been, how beautiful, how unfair. They cried and hugged each other and told Cole how sorry they were, and Hazel stood in the back again serving coffee and cake like she'd done at the wedding. Invisible, useful, forgotten. After the service, Cole sat alone in the front pew holding Ellie while people filed past offering condolences. The baby kept reaching toward the back of the church, her small face crumpling with confusion. "Hazy," she whimpered. "Want Hazy." Cole looked up. His eyes found Hazel across the crowded room, and something passed between them, some wordless understanding that neither of them knew what the hell to do with a 2-year-old who wanted her aunt more than her father. "Go to him," Hazel's mother hissed, appearing at her elbow. "The man needs help." "I don't think—" "Stop thinking and just go." Her mother's fingers dug into her arm. "Clara's gone. That baby needs a mother, and Cole needs a wife. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Horror crawled up Hazel's spine. "Mother, she's been dead for 3 days, and life goes on." Her mother's voice was matter-of-fact, practical. "You're not getting any younger, Hazel. This is your chance." "My chance?" Hazel stared at her mother like she was seeing her clearly for the first time. "Clara just died. My sister just died, and I'm already thinking about what happens next. Someone has to." Her mother straightened Hazel's collar, brushed imaginary lint from her shoulders. "You've spent your whole life wanting what Clara had. Well, now you can have it. The ranch, the husband, the child, everything you ever wanted." The words should have tempted her. They should have made her heart race with possibility. Instead, they made her feel sick. "I'm not going to—" Hazel pulled away from her mother's grip. "I'm not going to swoop in like some kind of vulture, and you're not swooping, you're helping family." Her mother's expression hardened. "That little girl loves you. Cole respects you, and whether you want to admit it or not, you still have feelings for him. This is practical. This is smart." "This is wrong. This is life." Her mother's voice dropped low. "And you've spent enough of yours standing in corners waiting for something better to come along. It won't. This is as good as it gets for someone like you." Someone like you. The words landed like they always did, heavy and final, and true in a way that made Hazel want to disappear. Before she could respond, Cole stood up from the pew, walked over with Ellie in his arms, the baby still reaching for Hazel with desperate hands. She's been asking for you, he said quietly. His voice was raw from crying, his eyes bloodshot and lost. Could you hold her, just for a minute? Hazel took Ellie automatically, and the little girl buried her face in Hazel's neck with a shuddering sigh of relief. Hazy, she whispered. Hazy home. Something inside Hazel's chest crumbled. I don't know what to do, Cole admitted, his voice breaking on the words. She won't eat for me. Won't sleep. I can't. He stopped, swallowed hard. Clara used to say you were the only one who could calm her down. I think she was right. Hazel's mother appeared beside them like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Hazel would be happy to help, wouldn't you, dear? She could stay at the ranch for a few days, just until things settled down. I couldn't ask her to, Cole started. You're not asking, we're offering. Her mother's smile was sharp as broken glass. It's what family does. And just like that, Hazel's fate was decided. She packed a bag that night, rode out to the ranch the next morning, moved into the guest bedroom and tried not to think about how Clara's clothes still hung in the closet. Clara's hairbrush still sat on the dresser. Clara's scent still lingered in the curtains. Cole barely spoke to her. He moved through the house like a ghost himself, hollow-eyed and silent, taking care of the ranch work because it was familiar, because it kept his hands busy, because the alternative was sitting still long enough to feel everything he was avoiding. Hazel took care of Ellie, cooked meals Cole barely touched, cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning, made herself useful in all the ways she'd learned growing up, all the ways that made her valuable even when she wasn't wanted. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Hazel kept telling herself she'd leave soon, that this was temporary, that she was just helping out until Cole found a proper nanny, until things settled down, until the grief wasn't so sharp it cut them both every time they tried to breathe. But Ellie wouldn't sleep unless Hazel was holding her. And Cole looked at Hazel sometimes like she was the only thing tethering him to the world. And Hazel's mother kept showing up uninvited with that knowing look on her face, the one that said, "See? I told you this was your chance." A month after the funeral, Cole asked Hazel to stay permanent. He did it awkwardly, standing in the kitchen doorway while she washed dishes, because of course she was washing dishes. That's what Hazel did. That's what Hazel had always done. Always. "I know this wasn't what you signed up for," he said to the floor, "and I know it's not fair to ask, but Ellie needs you, and I—" He stopped, started again. "I can't do this alone." Hazel's hands stilled in the soapy water. "What exactly are you asking?" Cole finally looked up, met her eyes. "Marry me." The words hit her like a punch to the sternum. "You don't mean that," she said automatically. "I do." He stepped closer, and she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "I'm not asking for love, Hazel. I'm not asking for anything except help. Ellie needs a mother. The ranch needs—" He gestured helplessly. "I need someone I can trust. Someone good. Someone who actually gives a damn about that little girl." "You barely know me." "I know enough." His voice went soft. "I know you've been sleeping 3 hours a night because Ellie has nightmares. I know you've been making my coffee exactly how I like it, even though I never told you. I know you've been keeping this house running while I fell apart, and you never once complained or made me feel guilty for it." Hazel's throat tightened. That's what people do. When someone dies." "No," Cole said quietly. "That's what you do. Because you're kind in ways most people aren't." The compliment should have warmed her. Instead, it made her angry. "Is this what my mother told you to do?" The question came out sharper than she meant it to. "Did she put this idea in your head? Tell you it made sense? Tell you I'd say yes?" Cole frowned. "Your mother didn't, because this is what she does." Hazel turned to face him fully, her hands dripping soap onto the floor. "She decides what's practical, and then she makes it happen, and she doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. And marrying me would be very practical, wouldn't it? I'm already here. I already know Ellie. I already keep your house clean and your meals warm and your daughter happy. So why not make it official? Why not turn the spinster sister into the replacement wife?" "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" Her voice cracked. "You loved Clara. I watched you fall in love with her. I watched you marry her and build a life with her, and grieve her like losing her ripped your heart out. And now you want me to just, step into her place? Like I'm some kind of understudy who's been waiting in the wings?" Cole's jaw tightened. You're nothing like Clara. I know that. The words tasted like ash. Yeah, believe me, I've always known that. That's not what I... He stopped, pressed his palms against his eyes. I'm doing this wrong. You think? I'm trying to be honest with you. He lowered his hands and Hazel saw something raw in his expression. I can't offer you romance. I can't promise I'll ever feel about you the way I felt about her. But I can promise I'll respect you. I can promise I'll never make you feel less than. And I can promise Ellie will have the mother she deserves. And what about what I deserve? The question came out smaller than she meant it to. Cole looked at her for a long moment. What do you want, Hazel? You, she thought. I've always wanted you. But saying it out loud would have destroyed what little dignity she had left. I want... She stopped, started over. I want to know this isn't just about convenience. I want to know you see me as a person, not just a solution to a problem. I see you. His voice was quiet but firm. Maybe not the way you want to be seen, but I see you. It wasn't enough, but it was more than she'd ever gotten before. Hazel looked at Cole Bennett, the man she'd loved silently for 5 years, the man who'd married her sister, the man who was now asking her to save him from drowning in grief. And she made the most practical decision of her life. Okay, she whispered. Cole's eyes widened. Okay? On one condition. Hazel straightened her spine, forced her voice steady. You never lie to me. Not about how you feel, not about what you want, not about anything. If this is going to be some kind of arrangement, then we're honest about it. No pretending it's something it's not. Cole nodded slowly. I can do that. Then yes, I'll marry you. The words hung in the air between them, binding and strange, and nothing like the proposal Hazel had imagined in all those late-night fantasies. They were married 2 weeks later in the same courthouse where Clara and Cole had signed their marriage license. No ceremony, no guests, just a judge and 2 witnesses pulled in from the street, and a little girl who didn't understand why Hazy was wearing a white dress. Cole slipped a plain gold band on Hazel's finger. She slipped one on his. And just like that, she became Mrs. Cole Bennett, the woman nobody chose, finally chosen, even if it was only because there was nobody else left to ask. The wedding night felt like a funeral. Hazel stood in the upstairs hallway of the ranch house she'd been living in for 6 weeks, holding her small travel bag and staring at the closed door to the master bedroom, Clara's bedroom, the one with the lavender sachets tucked in the dresser drawers, and the lace curtains Clara had spent 2 weeks embroidering with tiny flowers. Cole was downstairs putting Ellie to bed. Hazel could hear him reading in that low, patient voice he used with his daughter, the only time he sounded like something other than a man going through motions. She should go in, unpack her things. This was her room now, her house, her life. Except it wasn't. It was Clara's life, and Hazel was just wearing it like a coat that didn't fit right. She's asleep. Hazel jumped. Cole had come up the stairs without her hearing, moving quiet despite his size. He stood at the top of the landing looking at her, then at the bag in her hand, then at the closed bedroom door. The silence stretched out between them like a wire pulled too tight. I moved your things into the guest room, he said finally. The one you've been using. Hazel's chest tightened. That's not... We're married now. People will... Let them talk. Cole's voice was flat, tired. I told you I wouldn't pressure you into anything you didn't want. I meant it. But... Hazel. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something raw in his expression. I can barely stand to walk into that room myself. I'm not going to ask you to sleep in my dead wife's bed and pretend this is normal. The honesty hit her like cold water, shocking, clean. Okay, she whispered. Cole picked up her bag before she could protest, carried it down the hall to the small bedroom at the end, the one with the window facing east and the quilt Hazel had brought from home because she couldn't sleep under Clara's embroidered coverlet without feeling like an imposter. He set the bag on the chair by the door. There's a lock, he said, nodding toward the handle. If you want to use it. Hazel stared at him. You think I'm afraid of you? I think you should have the option. He stepped back into the hallway, putting distance between them. Good night, Hazel. He was gone before she could figure out what to say. Hazel closed the door but didn't lock it. Sat on the edge of the bed and looked down at the gold band on her finger. Too loose because Cole had guessed at her ring size and guessed wrong, but neither of them had mentioned it. This was her wedding night. She should have felt something: joy, fear, anticipation, regret, anything except this hollow numbness that made her feel like she was watching her own life happen to someone else. She changed into her nightgown, braided her hair, lay down in the dark, and listened to the house settle around her. Somewhere down the hall, Cole was doing the same thing. Two married people sleeping in separate rooms, bound by legal documents and practical necessity and absolutely nothing else. Hazel closed her eyes and waited for morning. The days after the wedding blurred together into a strange, tense routine. Hazel woke early and made breakfast. Cole ate in silence and went out to work the ranch. Ellie followed Hazel around the house like a small, devoted shadow. They avoided each other with the practiced efficiency of people who'd agreed not to look too closely at what they were doing. The town, of course, had opinions. "I heard Cole married that Mercer girl," Mrs. Patterson said loudly at the general store while Hazel was picking up flour. "The heavy one. Not even 3 months after poor Clara died." Hazel kept her eyes on the shelves and pretended not to hear. "Well, the baby needs a mother," someone else replied. "And Hazel's practical. Not like she had better prospects waiting." "Still, you'd think he'd wait a decent interval. Shows disrespect to Clara's memory." Hazel paid for her flour and walked out with her spine straight and her face burning. The same people who'd ignored her for years suddenly had plenty to say now that she'd done something they could judge. She drove the wagon back to the ranch in silence. That night, Cole came in from working late to find dinner waiting on the table. Pot roast with potatoes and carrots, bread still warm from the oven, coffee in his favorite cup. He stared at it like he'd never seen food before. "You didn't have to," he started. "I made enough for both of us," Hazel said, cutting him off. "Seems stupid to cook separately." Cole sat down slowly, picked up his fork, took a bite, and went completely still. "This is—" He stopped, started again. "This tastes like the pot roast from the church social, the one I bought 3 plates of last year." Hazel felt heat creep up her neck. "Same recipe." "You made that?" "I make most of what gets sold at the church socials." She pushed food around her plate without eating. "Have for years." Cole set down his fork. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Why would I? It's not like anyone asked." The words came out sharper than she meant them to. "Sorry, that was true." Cole's voice was quiet. "That was true." They ate in silence after that, but it felt different somehow. Less like avoidance and more like two people who didn't know how to talk to each other yet. When Hazel got up to clear the plates, Cole stood too. "I can help," he said. "You don't have to—" "Hazel." He picked up his plate before she could argue. "Let me help." So she did. They washed dishes side by side in silence. Cole washing, Hazel drying, and it should have been awkward, but somehow it wasn't. It was just quiet. The comfortable kind of quiet that came from shared work instead of shared words. When they finished, Cole poured himself another cup of coffee and sat back down at the table. Hazel started to leave, give him privacy, but he spoke before she reached the door. "Stay." She turned. "What?" "If you want." He gestured at the chair across from him. "You don't have to, but I—" He stopped, looking uncomfortable. The house gets too quiet at night, after Ellie goes to sleep. Hazel understood that. The quiet that felt less like peace and more like the space where all the things you didn't want to think about came crawling out. She sat down. They didn't talk. Just sat there drinking coffee while the lamp burned low and the wind rattled the windows. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it wasn't unbearable either. It was a start. The first real fight came 2 weeks into the marriage. Hazel had been cleaning the master bedroom, not touching Clara's things, just dusting around them, when she found the photograph tucked into the mirror frame. Clara on her wedding day, laughing up at Cole with her hand pressed against his chest. Young and beautiful and so clearly loved it made Hazel's teeth ache. She was still holding it when Cole walked in. "What are you doing?" His voice came out hard. Hazel fumbled the frame. I found it while I was cleaning my room." Cole's jaw tightened. "I don't remember asking you to do that. The dust was—" She stopped, forced herself to meet his eyes. "I wasn't going to throw anything away. I was just trying to help." "Help?" Cole took the photograph from her hands, staring down at it. "By going through Clara's things?" "They're not Clara's things anymore." The words came out before Hazel could stop them. She's dead, Cole. And I live here now. I can't keep walking past this room like it's a shrine. So what? You want to box everything up? Erase her? I want, Hazel's voice cracked. I want to feel like I'm allowed to exist in this house. Like I'm not just a placeholder keeping the bed warm until you figure out what to do with me. Cole went very still. Is that what you think you are? I don't know what I am. Hazel wrapped her arms around herself. You won't talk to me. You barely look at me. We sleep in separate rooms and eat in silence, and the only time you say more than 5 words to me is when you need something for Ellie. What do you want me to say? Cole's voice rose. You want me to pretend I'm over her? That I didn't spend 2 years building a life with her? That seeing you in her kitchen wearing her apron doesn't make me feel like I'm losing my mind? The words hit like fists. I'm not wearing her apron, Hazel said quietly. This one's mine. I brought it from home. Cole blinked, looked down at the plain cotton apron around her waist like he was seeing it for the first time. But you're right, Hazel continued, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. I am in her kitchen, in her house, married to her husband, raising her daughter, and every single day I wake up knowing I'm second choice, that you're only here because she's not. That's not... Don't. Hazel held up a hand. Don't lie to me. That was the one thing you promised. Honesty. Cole's mouth snapped shut. You married me because it was practical, Hazel said. Because Ellie needed someone and I was already here. That's fine. That's the deal we made. But if you want me to live in this house, really live here, not just hide in the guest room and tiptoe around your grief, then something has to change. Like what? Like, Hazel gestured helplessly at the room around them. Like, maybe we take down some of the pictures. Not all of them. Ellie should remember her mother. But I can't sleep down the hall from a bedroom that looks like Clara might walk back in any second. Cole's hand tightened on the photograph frame. You're asking me to forget her. I'm asking you to make room for me. Hazel's voice broke. Just a little room, that's all. They stared at each other across Clara's bedroom, 2 people trying to build something new in a space that still belonged to someone else. Finally, Cole set the photograph face down on the dresser. Okay, he said roughly, we'll figure something out. It wasn't much, but it was something. The changes came slowly, so slowly Hazel almost didn't notice at first. Cole took down the lace curtains in the master bedroom and asked Hazel what color she'd prefer instead. She chose cream, plain, practical, nothing like Clara's elaborate embroidery. When they went up, the room looked different, less like a museum, more like a space where someone actually lived. He moved Clara's clothes out of the closet and into the attic. Didn't ask Hazel's permission, just did it one Saturday afternoon while she was in town with Ellie. She came home to find empty hangers and Cole sitting on the porch steps looking like he'd run a marathon. You okay? She asked quietly. No. He didn't look at her. But I did it anyway. Hazel sat down beside him, not touching, but close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. They sat there until the sun went down and Ellie called them in for dinner. The next week, Cole brought home a stack of books from the town library. The librarian said you used to come in every Saturday, he said, setting them on the kitchen table, before you moved here. She said you liked these kinds. Hazel stared at the books, novels mostly, the kind with worn covers and cracked spines that meant other people had loved them first. You asked Mrs. Chen about me. I asked her what you liked to read. Cole shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. Figured you might want something to do in the evenings, besides sitting with me in silence. Something warm unfurled in Hazel's chest, small, fragile, dangerous. Thank you, she said softly. Cole nodded and left before she could say anything else. That night, they sat at the kitchen table with their coffee. But this time, Hazel had a book open in front of her. And Cole had yesterday's newspaper. And when Ellie woke up crying from a nightmare, they both went upstairs to comfort her, moving around each other with the practiced ease of people learning how to share space. Hazy, stay? Ellie whimpered, clinging to Hazel's nightgown. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Papa too? Cole sat on the other side of the small bed, his large hand gentle on his daughter's back. I'm here too, little bit. Ellie's eyes drifted closed, comforted by their presence. Hazel started to stand, to leave Cole alone with his daughter, but his voice stopped her. Could you... He cleared his throat. Could you stay? Just until she's really asleep? So Hazel stayed. They sat on opposite sides of Ellie's bed, watching her breathe in the darkness, and neither of them mentioned how this felt like something a real family might do. The next morning, Hazel came downstairs to find Cole making coffee. "I know how you take it," he said without turning around. "2 sugars, extra cream." Hazel stopped in the doorway. "How did you—" "I've been watching you make it for 2 months." He poured her a cup and held it out. "Figured I should learn." Their fingers brushed when she took the cup. Neither of them pulled away immediately. "Thank you," Hazel said. "It's just coffee." "No." She met his eyes. "It's not." Something shifted in Cole's expression, something that made Hazel's heart do a complicated thing in her chest. Then Ellie came running into the kitchen demanding pancakes, and the moment passed. But Hazel remembered it. 3 months into the marriage, Hazel's mother came to visit. She showed up unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, sweeping into the house like she owned it, inspecting everything with sharp, critical eyes. "Well," she said, running a finger along the mantel, "you've certainly made yourself comfortable." Hazel tensed. "I live here now." "So you do." Her mother smiled that thin, knowing smile. "Mrs. Cole Bennett, I have to admit I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." "Why wouldn't I?" "Because you've spent your whole life being too proud to take what you can get." Her mother moved through the kitchen, opening cupboards, judging arrangements. "But I suppose desperation makes us all practical eventually." "I wasn't desperate." "No?" Her mother turned to face her. "Then what would you call it? Love?" The word hung in the air like smoke. "Cole needed help," Hazel said carefully. "Ellie needed—" "Everyone needs something, dear. The question is what you get in return." Her mother's eyes gleamed. "So tell me, has he touched you yet?" Heat flooded Hazel's face. "That's none of your—" "Ah, so no." Her mother nodded like this confirmed something. "Well, you can't expect much more. Men marry practical women for practical reasons. Passion is for the beautiful ones." "Get out." The words came out quiet but absolute. Her mother blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said get out." Hazel's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. "This is my house now, and you don't get to walk in here and—" "Your house?" Her mother laughed. "Sweetheart, this will never be your house. This is Clara's house. You're just borrowing it." "Mrs. Mercer." Both women turned. Cole stood in the kitchen doorway, still dusty from working outside, his expression carved from stone. "I think Hazel asked you to leave," he said quietly. Hazel's mother drew herself up. "I'm her mother. I have a right to—" "You have the right to respect her in her own home." Cole's voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved underneath it. "Or you can leave and not come back until you figure out how." The silence that followed could have cut glass. "Well," her mother gathered her bag with sharp, angry movements. "I can see where I'm not wanted." "Yes," Hazel said. "You can." Her mother's face went tight with fury. She swept past both of them without another word, and a minute later they heard her wagon rattling down the drive. Hazel stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, her whole body shaking. "You okay?" Cole asked. "I just—" Her voice cracked. "I've never done that before. Never told her to leave. Probably should have done it years ago." Cole moved closer, and Hazel realized he was angry, really angry. "What she said about you, about this being Clara's house. She's not wrong, though." Hazel forced herself to meet his eyes. "Is she?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the kitchen and opened one of the drawers by the stove, the one where Hazel kept her cooking spoons and mixing bowls. "You reorganized these," he said. Yes, they were in the wrong order." He opened another drawer. "These too." "The old system didn't make sense." Cole moved through the kitchen opening drawers and cupboards, and Hazel watched in confusion as he cataloged every single change she'd made in 3 months of living there. "The curtains are yours," he said. "The dish towels. The spice rack. The way the cups are organized. The flowers in that vase by the window. Clara never kept fresh flowers." "You do." He turned to face her. "This stopped being Clara's house the day you moved in and started making it work better." Hazel's throat tightened. I was just trying to be useful." "No." Cole shook his head. You were making a home. There's a difference. But you still... She stopped, started again. You still sleep in the guest room. We barely talk. You can't even look at me sometimes without remembering she's gone. I know. Cole's voice went rough. And I'm sorry for that. But Hazel, you're not her replacement. You've never been her replacement. Then what am I? The question came out smaller than she meant it to. Cole looked at her for a long moment. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I'm trying to figure it out. It wasn't a declaration of love, it wasn't even close. But it was honest, and somehow that made it mean more. That night, Cole knocked on Hazel's bedroom door around midnight. Can't sleep, he said when she answered. Thought maybe if you're still awake, we could have coffee. So they sat at the kitchen table in their nightclothes with coffee neither of them really wanted, and for the first time since the wedding, they actually talked. Not about Clara, not about the marriage, just talked. Cole told her about growing up on the ranch, about his father who died when he was 16 and left him running the whole operation alone. Hazel told him about learning to cook from her grandmother, about the books she'd read in secret because her mother thought reading was a waste of time for girls who weren't pretty enough to marry well. Your mother's a piece of work, Cole said. She's practical. Hazel wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Everything's a transaction to her. She sees the world in terms of what people can provide. Is that how you see it? I used to. Hazel met his eyes. But I'm trying to learn different. Cole nodded slowly. Me too. They sat in silence for a while, and Hazel realized it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. Somewhere in the last few months, the silence between them had shifted from avoidance to something that almost felt like peace. Can I ask you something? Cole said finally. Okay. Why did you say yes when I asked you to marry me? He leaned forward, his expression serious. And don't say it was for Ellie. I know you love her, but there was something else. I saw it in your face that day. Hazel's heart started beating faster. Why does it matter? Because I need to know what I'm asking from you. His voice went quiet. I need to know what you gave up. She could have lied, should have lied, but they'd promised honesty. I've been in love with you since I was 23 years old, she said. The words came out steady even though inside she was falling apart. Since the day you brought firewood to our house during that winter storm. And I watched you fall in love with Clara instead. And I watched you marry her. And I watched you grieve her. And when you asked me to marry you, I said yes because I thought maybe... Her voice broke. I thought maybe if I stayed close enough, eventually you might see me the way you saw her. Cole looked like she had punched him. Hazel, but I know that's not going to happen. She forced herself to keep going. I know you married me because it was practical, because I was there and I was useful and Ellie needed someone. And that's fine. That's the deal we made. I just need you to understand that when you ask me why I said yes, she met his eyes. That's why. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Then Cole reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was rough from ranch work. His grip was gentle, and Hazel felt something inside her chest crack wide open. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to be married to someone I'm not in love with. I don't know how to share a life with you when half of me is still stuck in the past. He squeezed her hand. But I'm trying, and maybe, if you're patient with me, maybe I can figure out how to see you the way you deserve to be seen. It wasn't a promise of love. It wasn't even close, but it was more than Hazel had ever gotten before. Okay, she whispered. They sat there holding hands across the kitchen table until the coffee went cold and the first light of dawn started creeping through the windows. And somewhere in that quiet, dark hour, something between them started to shift. The next morning, Cole asked Hazel to help him go through some old papers in his office. Ranch records that needed organizing, legal documents that needed filing. It was boring work, the kind that took hours and made your eyes blur. But it meant working side by side, talking through decisions, learning how each other thought. Around noon, Hazel found a letter tucked into a stack of old receipts. It was addressed to Cole in Clara's handwriting. Her hands froze on the paper. What is it? Cole looked up from the ledger he was reviewing. Hazel held out the letter without speaking. Cole's face went white. Where did you? It was in the ranch records, from 2 years ago. Hazel's voice came out steady even though her heart was racing. It's sealed. I didn't read it. Cole took the letter like it might burn him, turned it over in his hands, staring at Clara's handwriting like he was seeing a ghost. "Do you want me to leave?" Hazel asked quietly. "No." The word came out fast. "No, I—" He looked at her, and something in his expression made Hazel's chest tighten. "Will you stay while I read it?" So Hazel stayed. She watched Cole's face as he opened the letter and read whatever Clara had written 2 years ago. Back when she was still alive, still his wife, still the woman he loved more than anything. She watched his expression shift from grief to confusion to something that looked almost like shock. When he finished, he set the letter down with shaking hands. "Cole?" Hazel's voice came out barely above a whisper. "What did it say?" He didn't answer for a long moment, just sat there, staring at the letter like it had rearranged his entire understanding of the world. Then he looked up at Hazel with something raw and complicated in his eyes. "She knew," he said hoarsely. "Clara knew you loved me." The words hit Hazel like a physical blow. "What?" "She wrote this before Ellie was born." Cole's voice was rough. "Said she was afraid something might happen during childbirth. Said she needed to tell me some things in case—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "She knew you loved me. Said she'd known since the beginning, since that first day I came to your house." Hazel couldn't breathe. "That's not possible. I never—" "She said you looked at me the way she wished someone would look at her, like I was—" Cole's voice cracked. "Like I was everything." The room felt too small suddenly. Too hot. Hazel stood up, needing space, needing air, needing to be anywhere except in that office with Cole looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "I need—" She moved toward the door. "I need to check on Ellie." "Hazel, wait!" But she was already gone. Hazel made it to the kitchen before her knees gave out. She gripped the edge of the counter, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. Clara had known, all those years, all those dinners where Hazel had served them both, all those visits where she'd held Ellie while Clara and Cole laughed together, all those moments Hazel thought she'd hidden it so carefully. Clara had seen right through her. The humiliation burned worse than any physical pain. "Hazel," Cole's voice came from the doorway. She didn't turn around. "Don't," she said. "Please just don't." "I need to tell you what else she wrote." "I don't want to hear it." Hazel's hands were shaking so hard she had to press them flat against the counter to keep them still. "Whatever she said about me, whatever she thought, she was sorry." The word stopped Hazel cold. "What?" Cole moved closer. She could feel him behind her, close enough that his presence changed the air. "Clara wrote that she was sorry, that she knew I'd walked into your kitchen first that day, that you'd opened the door and I'd seen you first. And then she came down the stairs and you forgot I existed." Hazel's voice came out flat. "Dead." "I was there, Cole. I remember." "She said she did it on purpose." Cole's voice roughened. "Said she saw the way you looked at me and the way I started to smile at you, and she got scared. Scared that for once in her life, someone might choose her older sister instead of her." Hazel turned around slowly. Cole stood 3 feet away, Clara's letter still clutched in his hand, looking like the words he was saying hurt him physically. "That's not—" Hazel shook her head. "Clara was beautiful. She was perfect. Why would she be scared of me? Because you were real." Cole's jaw tightened. "She wrote that everyone loved her for being pretty, for being sweet and delicate and easy to look at. But they never really saw her, never wanted to know what she was actually thinking." He looked down at the letter. "She said you were the only person who ever asked her real questions, who treated her like she had a brain. And that day, when I came to your house, she panicked, because she could see me starting to see you the same way." The kitchen felt like it was tilting sideways. "So she what?" Hazel's voice cracked. "She just decided to take you? Like you were a prize she had to win?" "She said it wasn't like that." Cole rubbed his face with his free hand. "She said she told herself it was fine, that I'd get over it, that you'd find someone else. But then years went by and you never did. And every time she saw you at family dinners or church or—" He stopped. "She knew you were suffering, and she felt guilty about it, but not guilty enough to tell me the truth." Hazel laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. "So what? She wrote you a letter confessing her sins in case she died? That was supposed to make it better." No. Cole's voice went quiet. She wrote that she hoped if something happened to her, maybe you'd finally get what you deserved. That maybe I'd be smart enough the second time around to see what was right in front of me. The words hung in the air between them like a live wire. Hazel couldn't breathe. That's sick. She basically gave me permission to marry her husband, like I was waiting in the wings for her to die so I could swoop in, and she was scared. Cole took a step closer. She was 21 years old and pregnant and terrified she might not survive childbirth, and she was trying to make peace with the idea that the two people she loved most might end up together after she was gone. The two people... Hazel stopped. She didn't love me. She stole you from me. She loved you. Cole's voice was firm. The whole letter, it's full of things about you, about how you were the strongest person she knew, how you never complained even when your mother treated you like hired help, how you made everyone's life better just by being in it. His throat worked. She said if anyone deserved to be happy, it was you. Hazel's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. I don't want her permission, she whispered. I don't want her blessing or her guilt or her... The words caught in her throat. I wanted you to choose me because you wanted me. Not because my dead sister thought it would make a good ending to her tragedy. Cole flinched like she'd slapped him. Good, Hazel thought viciously. Let him hurt. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd been carrying alone for 5 goddamn years. I'm going to check on Ellie, she said, her voice cold and controlled. And then I'm going into town. Don't wait dinner for me. She walked past him without looking back. Hazel spent 3 hours at the general store pretending to shop, while actually just trying not to fall apart in public. Mrs. Patterson tried to make conversation about the weather. Mr. Chen asked after Cole and Ellie. Young Sarah Miller, newly engaged and glowing with it, showed Hazel her ring and talked breathlessly about wedding plans. Hazel smiled and nodded and said all the right things while inside she was screaming. When she finally got back to the ranch, the sun was setting and the house was dark except for a lamp burning in the kitchen window. Cole's horse was in the barn. Ellie's toys were scattered across the porch. Everything looked exactly like a home. Except Hazel had never felt less like she belonged anywhere. She put away her purchases, things they didn't really need but she'd bought anyway just to have an excuse to stay gone, and found Ellie asleep on the sofa with her thumb in her mouth. Cole was nowhere to be seen. Hazel carried Ellie upstairs, tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead the way she did every night. The little girl stirred but didn't wake, and Hazel stood there in the doorway watching her sleep and feeling something crack wider in her chest. This child loved her, needed her, called her Mama Hazel with complete trust that Hazel would always be there. But Cole, she was asking for you. Hazel turned. Cole stood in the hallway, still in his work clothes, looking exhausted. I had things to do in town, Hazel said stiffly. For 3 hours? I lost track of time. Cole studied her face in the dim light. You've been crying. I have not. Hazel. Don't. She moved past him toward her bedroom. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. His hand caught her wrist, gentle, careful. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Hazel pulled free. Clara knew I loved you. You know I love you. Everyone apparently knew except me that I was completely transparent about it. Congratulations. My humiliation is complete. That's not what I... What do you want from me, Cole? The question came out raw, desperate. You want me to say it's fine? That I'm grateful my sister felt guilty enough about stealing my life that she gave me permission to have the scraps after she was done with them? She didn't steal. Yes, she did. Hazel's voice rose. You said it yourself. You walked into our kitchen and saw me first. You smiled at me, and then she came down the stairs and erased me like I was nothing, like I never even existed. Cole's jaw tightened. I made my own choices, Hazel. Clara didn't force me to... Didn't she? Hazel laughed bitterly. You read the letter. She admitted she did it on purpose, that she saw you starting to notice me and she couldn't stand it. She was 19 years old and scared, and I was 23 and in love. Hazel's voice cracked. I was 23 years old, and for the first time in my entire life, someone looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth noticing, and then my baby sister took that away because she was scared of not being the center of attention for once in her perfect life. The words echoed in the hallway. Cole looked at her with something complicated in his expression, pain and understanding and something else Hazel couldn't name, You're right, he said quietly. Hazel blinked. What? You're right. Cole's voice was rough. Clara was wrong. I was wrong. Your whole family was wrong for making you feel like you didn't deserve to be chosen first. He took a step closer. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was too stupid to see past a pretty face. I'm sorry I fell for the performance instead of looking for what was real. And I'm sorry it took me 5 years and a dead wife to figure out what should have been obvious from the beginning. Hazel's throat tightened. Don't. Don't what? Don't say things you don't mean just because you feel guilty. I'm not. Yes, you are. Hazel wrapped her arms around herself. You feel bad because Claire's letter made you realize you hurt me. And you're a good man, Cole. You don't like knowing you caused someone pain. But guilt isn't the same as actually seeing me. And I... Her voice broke. I can't do this if it's just guilt. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What if it's not? Hazel looked up sharply. What if it started as guilt but turned into something else? Cole's eyes met hers. What if I've been watching you for 4 months now? Watching the way you take care of Ellie like she's yours. The way you reorganized my kitchen to make it work better. The way you remember how I take my coffee and what days I like pot roast and when I need silence instead of conversation. He moved closer. What if I've been lying awake in that guest room wondering how I got so lucky that you said yes to marrying me? Hazel's heart was beating so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. You don't mean that, she whispered. I'm not in love with you. The words should have hurt. Somehow they didn't. Not yet. Not the way I was with Clara, but Hazel. His voice went soft. I think I could be, if you let me. The silence that followed felt like standing at the edge of something high and dangerous. I don't know how to do this, Hazel admitted. I don't know how to trust that you mean it, that you're not just... Then don't trust me yet. Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. His hand cupped her cheek with a gentleness that made her chest ache. Make me prove it. His thumb brushed away a tear Hazel hadn't realized had fallen. How? She asked. However you need me to. They stood there in the dark hallway, close enough that Hazel could feel the heat coming off his body. And for the first time since the wedding, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could turn into something real. Then Ellie cried out from her bedroom, and the moment shattered. They both moved at once, nearly colliding in the doorway. Ellie was sitting up in bed, her face crumpled with tears, reaching for both of them with desperate hands. Bad dream, she sobbed. Mama went away again. Hazel's heart broke. She sat on one side of the bed and Cole sat on the other, and together they soothed Ellie back to sleep with quiet words and gentle touches. When the little girl finally settled, Hazel started to stand, but Cole's voice stopped her. Stay, he said quietly. Please. So they stayed, sitting on opposite sides of Ellie's small bed, watching her sleep, and somewhere in that quiet darkness, Cole's hand found Hazel's across the covers. His fingers laced through hers, and this time, Hazel didn't pull away. The next morning brought rain, the kind that turned the roads to mud and kept everyone inside. Cole worked in the barn while Hazel and Ellie baked cookies in the kitchen, and when he came in for lunch, he tracked mud across the floor Hazel had just mopped. Sorry, he said, looking genuinely apologetic. I'll clean it up. You'll track more in when you go back out. Hazel didn't look up from the sandwich she was making. Just leave your boots by the door next time. Cole pulled off his boots, then his wet jacket. Then he stood there in stocking feet, looking uncertain in his own house. Sit down, Hazel said. You're making me nervous. He sat. Hazel put the sandwich in front of him, thick slices of bread, roast beef from last night's dinner, the mustard he liked but never asked for. She'd been married to him for 4 months now. She knew these things. You put pickles on it, Cole said, staring at the sandwich like she'd performed magic. You always pick them off Clara's sandwiches. Hazel stopped, corrected herself. You used to pick them off. I figured you didn't like them. Something shifted in Cole's expression. I didn't. Don't. He looked up at her. How did you know that? I pay attention. Yeah. His voice went soft. You do. They ate in silence while rain hammered against the windows and Ellie played with her dolls on the floor. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt almost peaceful. Until Ellie came running over with something clutched in her small fist. "Papa, look!" She thrust a crumpled piece of paper at Cole. Found it under Hazy's bed. Hazel's blood went cold. Cole unfolded the paper, and Hazel watched his eyes move across the words. Her words. Written in her own hand in a journal she'd been keeping since she was 16 years old. The entry from 5 years ago. The one about the day Cole had brought them firewood. The one where she'd written in painful, embarrassing detail about how he'd smiled at her, and how her heart had felt like it might explode, and how, for one perfect moment, she'd let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone like him could see something worthwhile in someone like her. "Ellie, give that back," Hazel said, but her voice came out weak. "Why?" Ellie looked between them with innocent confusion. "It's about Papa." Cole was still reading. His expression had gone completely blank. "Ellie, go wash your hands," Hazel said, forcing her voice steady. "You've got cookie dough on them." "But now." Something in Hazel's tone made Ellie obey without arguing. The moment she was gone, Hazel grabbed for the paper, but Cole pulled it back. "Don't," she said desperately. "Please don't read that." Too late. His voice sounded strange. "Hazel, this is humiliating, I know." She wrapped her arms around herself. "It's from years ago, before you married Clara, before any of this. It doesn't mean anything now." "It means everything." Cole stood up, still holding the journal page. "You wrote that keeping a candle burning made the darkness feel less permanent." Hazel's stomach dropped. "So? So I want to know what that means." "It means exactly what it says." She couldn't look at him. "When things were bad at home, when my mother was especially cruel, or when I felt particularly invisible, I'd light a candle in my room. Just to have something, some small light that proved the dark wasn't all there was." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Did you have to do that often?" he asked finally. "Every night for about 3 years." The silence that followed felt like drowning. "Hazel," Cole's voice had gone rough. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" "Who was I supposed to tell?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "My mother, who made me feel that way. Clara, who was everyone's favorite. You, who barely knew I existed." She laughed bitterly. "There wasn't anyone to tell." Cole looked down at the journal page like it physically hurt him to hold it. "There's more," he said quietly. "Isn't there? More pages. More entries." It wasn't a question. Hazel thought about lying, about pretending that one page was all that existed, but they'd promised honesty. "Yes," she whispered. "Can I—" He stopped, started again. "Would you let me read them?" "No." The word came out sharp, absolute. "Those are private. They're years of you suffering alone." Cole's jaw tightened. "Years of you watching me be with Clara while I what? Pined away like some pathetic— While you kept a candle burning?" His voice cracked. "While you tried to make the darkness feel less permanent because no one else would." Hazel's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "What do you want from me, Cole? You want me to hand over my journals so you can read every humiliating detail of how much I loved you? So you can see exactly how pathetic I was?" "You weren't pathetic." "I was." Hazel's voice broke. "I spent 5 years loving a man who didn't know I existed, who married my sister, who only noticed me after she died. If that's not pathetic, I don't know what is." Cole crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides and grabbed her shoulders. Not roughly, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. "You want to know what's pathetic?" His eyes blazed. "I spent 2 years married to a woman I thought I knew, who I thought was perfect. And the whole time, the person who actually saw me, who paid attention to what I needed and what I liked and who I was when no one was performing, was standing right there. And I was too stupid to notice." "Cole, you remember how I take my coffee? You know I don't like pickles. You reorganized my kitchen to make it work better. You love my daughter like she's yours." His grip tightened. "And 5 years ago, when I walked into your kitchen, I smiled at you. Do you remember that?" Hazel nodded, not trusting her voice. "I smiled because you looked at me like I was a person instead of a prize," Cole said roughly. "Like you wanted to know what I thought instead of just what I looked like. And I was about to ask your name, your actual name, because I'd seen you at church, but we'd never been introduced. And then Clara came down those stairs. And you forgot I existed. And I got distracted by something shiny. Cole's voice went hard. But that doesn't mean the first thing wasn't real. It just means I was 25 years old and stupid. Hazel didn't know what to say to that. I can't change the past, Cole continued. I can't give you back those 5 years. But Hazel, his hands moved from her shoulders to cup her face. I can try to make the future different, if you let me. How? The word came out barely above a whisper. Cole's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. However you need me to. They stood there in the middle of the kitchen with rain drumming against the roof and Ellie singing to herself in the other room, and Hazel felt something inside her chest start to unfold, something that felt dangerously close to hope. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? That you'll wake up one day and realize you settled. That I'm not... She stopped, forced herself to say it. That I'm not enough. Cole's eyes softened. You think I settled? I know you did. Then you're wrong. His voice was quiet but absolute. Clara was beautiful. But Hazel, you're real. And I'm starting to think real is worth a hell of a lot more than beautiful. The words should have felt like enough. They almost did. But something in Hazel still couldn't quite believe them. Prove it, she said. Cole's eyebrows rose. What? You said to make you prove it. So prove it. Hazel pulled back, putting space between them. Show me this isn't just guilt. Show me you actually see me. How? Hazel thought about it, about all the years she'd spent being invisible, all the ways she'd learned to make herself smaller so other people could shine brighter. Take me somewhere, she said finally. Not because Ellie needs something, not because there's an errand to run, just take me somewhere because you want to spend time with me. Cole nodded slowly. Okay. And talk to me. Really talk. Not just about ranch business or Ellie or what we need from town. Tell me things that matter. Okay? And Hazel stopped. This was the hard one. The one that made her feel vulnerable just saying it. Stop sleeping in the guest room. Cole went very still. Hazel, I'm not saying... She felt her face heat. I'm not asking you to... We don't have to... She stopped. Tried again. I just don't want to spend the rest of my life sleeping alone while my husband is down the hall. If we're going to be married, then be married to me, even if it's just sleeping in the same room. The silence stretched out between them. Then Cole said quietly, I can do that. Something in Hazel's chest loosened. Okay, she whispered. That night, after Ellie was asleep, Hazel stood in the doorway of the master bedroom and watched Cole change the sheets. He'd spent the afternoon boxing up the last of Clara's things, the lavender sachets, the embroidered pillowcases, the small porcelain figurines she'd collected. The room looked different without them, emptier, but also somehow more like a place two people might actually build something new. You don't have to do this if you're not ready, Cole said without looking at her. I know. I mean it, Hazel. If you want to keep sleeping in the guest room, I don't. She forced herself to step across the threshold. I'm tired of hiding. Cole turned to face her fully. This isn't hiding. It's protecting yourself. From what? From me hurting you again. Hazel met his eyes. You're going to hurt me again. That's what people do when they live together, when they try to build something real. She moved closer. But I'd rather be hurt in a real marriage than safe in a fake one. Something in Cole's expression cracked open. Come here, he said quietly. Hazel crossed the room. Let him pull her into his arms. Let herself rest her head against his chest and feel his heartbeat steady and strong under her cheek. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other in the room that used to belong to Clara but was slowly becoming theirs. When they finally pulled apart, Cole brushed a strand of hair from Hazel's face with a gentleness that made her throat tight. I'm going to mess this up, he said. I'm going to say the wrong thing and forget important things and probably hurt your feelings without meaning to. I know, but I want to try anyway. His hand cupped her cheek. I want to try to be the kind of husband you deserve. Then try, Hazel whispered. That night they slept in the same bed for the first time, not touching, a careful foot of space between them, but in the same room, breathing the same air, And when Hazel woke up at 3 in the morning from a bad dream, Cole was there. "You okay?" His voice was rough with sleep. "Bad dream. Want to talk about it?" Hazel almost said no, almost defaulted to the years of training that said her feelings didn't matter, that she should handle things alone. Instead, she said, "I dreamed you changed your mind, that you woke up and realized marrying me was a mistake." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the space between them and found her hand in the darkness. "Not a mistake," he said quietly. "Maybe the best decision I've made in years. Just took me too long to figure it out." Hazel's throat tightened. "You're just saying that." "No." His grip tightened. "I'm realizing it." They fell asleep like that, hands linked across the sheets, the space between them smaller than it had been before. And when morning came and Hazel woke to find Cole still there, still holding her hand, something in her chest that had been clenched tight for years finally started to relax. Maybe this could work. Maybe she could let herself believe she was worth choosing after all. The changes came slow, so slow that some days Hazel wondered if she was imagining them. Cole started coming in from the barn earlier, started asking her opinion on ranch decisions instead of just telling her what he'd decided. Started sitting closer on the sofa when they read together in the evenings, close enough that their shoulders touched, that she could feel the warmth coming off his body. Small things, careful things, like he was learning a language he'd never been taught. 2 weeks after they'd started sharing the bedroom, Hazel woke to find Cole already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her sleep. "That's creepy," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "Probably." He didn't look away. "But you're different when you're sleeping." "Different how?" "Peaceful." His hand moved to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Like you're not carrying the weight of the world for once." Hazel's throat tightened. "I don't." "You do." Cole's thumb traced along her cheekbone. "You carry everyone's burdens, Ellie's, mine, even people in town who don't deserve your kindness, and you do it so quietly that no one notices how heavy it must be." The observation hit too close to something true. "Someone has to," Hazel said finally. "Why does it have to be you?" She didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe she did, but it was too complicated to explain. How being useful had been the only way she'd ever learned to matter. How if she stopped carrying things for other people, she might discover there was nothing underneath. Cole seemed to understand anyway. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, brief and warm and achingly gentle. "You matter even when you're not being useful," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" Hazel's eyes burned. She turned her face into the pillow before he could see the tears. But Cole's hand found her shoulder, and he pulled her back against his chest, and they lay there as morning light crept through the curtains, breathing together, hearts beating in the same room, learning how to be married without the ghosts between them. That afternoon, Cole asked Hazel to ride out with him to check the north pasture. "What about Ellie?" Hazel asked, already mentally running through who could watch her. "Mrs. Patterson offered to take her for a few hours." Cole pulled on his work gloves, not quite meeting Hazel's eyes. "I thought, if you wanted, we could spend some time, just the two of us." It was the first time he'd ever suggested such a thing. Hazel's heart did something complicated in her chest. "Okay." They rode out together on horses Cole had saddled himself, Hazel on the gentle mare she'd been learning on, Cole on his big bay gelding that always made her nervous. The autumn air was crisp and clean, carrying the smell of dry grass and distant wood smoke. "I haven't been out here in months," Cole said as they reached the ridge overlooking the valley. "Used to come up here when I needed to think." Hazel looked out at the view, rolling hills stretching toward mountains that looked blue in the distance. "It's beautiful." "Yeah." But when she glanced over, Cole was looking at her instead of the landscape. "It is." Heat crept up Hazel's neck. "You're supposed to be looking at the view." "I am." The words hung in the air between them, obvious and awkward and somehow exactly right. They dismounted and sat on the ridge eating the lunch Hazel had packed. Cole talked about growing up on the ranch, about his father, who died too young and left him scrambling to hold everything together at 16. About the years of loneliness before Clara, when he'd convinced himself that work was enough. "Why did you ask her to marry you?" Hazel asked. The question had been sitting in her chest for years. "Clara, I mean. Was it love or..." I thought it was love. Cole stared out at the valley. She was beautiful and sweet, and everyone approved. It felt like, I don't know, like I'd won something. He was quiet for a moment. But looking back, I don't know if I actually knew her, the real her. I knew the version she showed me. She was a good person, Hazel said automatically. She was complicated. Cole glanced at her. Just like everyone else. But I didn't want to see that. I wanted the pretty illusion. Hazel pulled her knees to her chest. And now? Now I think I'd rather have something real, even if it's messier. His hand found hers in the grass between them. Even if it scares me. Does this scare you? Hazel asked quietly. Us? Terrifies me. Cole's grip tightened. Because if I mess this up, if I hurt you the way I hurt you before, I don't think I'll forgive myself. You're going to hurt me. Hazel turned to look at him. That's what people do. But Cole, you can't be so afraid of making mistakes that you don't try at all. Something shifted in his expression. When did you get so wise? I've had a lot of practice being invisible. Gives you time to think. Cole's jaw tightened. You're not invisible to me. Not anymore. Prove it. The challenge was becoming familiar between them, a way of pushing each other toward honesty. Cole stood and pulled her up with him. Come here. He led her to the edge of the ridge where the view opened up completely. The whole valley spread out below them like something out of a painting. See that oak tree down there? Cole pointed. The big one by the creek? Hazel nodded. I proposed to Clara under that tree. His voice was matter-of-fact. Seemed romantic at the time. But standing here now, I realize I picked the spot because it looked good, because it was what I thought a proposal should be. Hazel's chest tightened. She didn't know where he was going with this. But if I could do it over, Cole continued, turning to face her, I wouldn't pick the pretty spot. I'd pick somewhere real, somewhere that mattered. Like where? Like your kitchen. His eyes held hers. Where I first saw you. Where I should have asked your name instead of getting distracted. Hazel's breath caught. Cole, I'm not asking you to marry me again, he said quickly. We already did that part, but I'm asking... He stopped, started over. I'm asking if you'll let me court you. Do this the right way, the way I should have done it 5 years ago. The words hit Hazel like a punch to the sternum. We're already married, she said stupidly. I know, but we skipped all the parts that matter. The getting to know each other, the building trust, He gestured helplessly. The falling in love part. You can't just decide to fall in love with someone. Maybe not. Cole stepped closer. But I can decide to try. If you'll let me. Hazel stared at him. This man who'd married her out of necessity, who was now standing on a ridge in the middle of nowhere, asking permission to love her properly. What if you try and realize you can't? The question came out small, scared. What if I'm just not? What if there's nothing there? Then we'll figure it out together. Cole's hand cupped her face. But Hazel, I don't think that's going to be the problem. What is the problem then? That I'm starting too late. That I wasted 5 years when I could have been... His voice roughened. When I could have been choosing you. Hazel's eyes burned with tears she couldn't stop this time. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Court me. The words felt strange in her mouth. Do it properly. Show me what I missed. Cole's smile was small but genuine. I will. He kissed her then. Not the brief, careful kiss from before. This one was slow and thorough and tasted like promise. Like maybe this broken thing between them could be rebuilt into something stronger. When they pulled apart, Hazel's hands were shaking. We should get back, she said, before Mrs. Patterson thinks we've abandoned Ellie. In a minute. Cole pulled her closer, resting his chin on top of her head. Let me hold you for a minute. So they stood there on the ridge while the wind moved through the grass and the horses grazed nearby. And Hazel let herself imagine, really imagine, what it might feel like to be loved by Cole Bennett the way she'd dreamed about for years. The thought was terrifying, but for the first time it also felt possible. When they got back to the ranch, Mrs. Patterson was waiting on the porch with Ellie, who launched herself at both of them with the particular drama of a 3-year-old who'd been separated from her parents for exactly 90 minutes. She's been asking for you every 5 minutes, Mrs. Patterson said with the long-suffering patience of someone who'd raised 6 children of her own. I swear that child is attached to you with invisible string. Sorry, Hazel said, scooping Ellie up. We didn't mean to be gone so long. Don't apologize. Mrs. Patterson's eyes moved between Cole and Hazel with shrewd assessment. It's good to see you two spending time together. Young couples need that. The words hung in the air, a tacit acknowledgement that the town was watching, judging, waiting to see if this strange marriage would actually work. After Mrs. Patterson left, Cole took Ellie while Hazel started dinner, but instead of disappearing to the barn like usual, he stayed in the kitchen, entertaining their daughter while Hazel cooked, making her laugh with silly voices and gentle teasing. Papa's being funny today, Ellie announced, giggling. Is he? Hazel glanced over her shoulder. Very funny. Cole caught her eye and smiled, a real smile that made something warm bloom in Hazel's chest. They ate dinner together at the table, put Ellie to bed together, sat together in the living room afterward with coffee and books and the comfortable silence that had become familiar between them. But tonight felt different. Tonight, every time Hazel looked up from her book, she found Cole watching her. And when their eyes met, he didn't look away. What? She asked finally. Nothing. His voice was soft. Just looking. At what? You. He set down his book. Trying to figure out how I missed it. Missed what? How beautiful you are. The words hit Hazel like cold water. She waited for the punchline, the clarification, the I mean on the inside that would soften the blow. It didn't come. I'm not... She stopped, started over. You don't have to say things like that. I'm not saying it because I have to. Cole moved from his chair to sit beside her on the sofa. I'm saying it because it's true. Cole, you have freckles across your nose that get darker in summer. His finger traced the bridge of her nose lightly. And your eyes change color depending on what you're wearing, and you bite your bottom lip when you're concentrating on something. Hazel's breath caught. You noticed all that? I've been noticing everything. His hand moved to cup her face. The way you hum when you're kneading bread. The way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous. The way you light up when Ellie calls you Mama Hazel. Those are just things I do. They're things that make you you. Cole's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. And I'm starting to think you is exactly what I've been looking for. Hazel wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly her chest ached with it. But years of being second choice didn't disappear overnight. You're trying too hard, she said quietly. Cole pulled back slightly. What? You're trying to make yourself feel things because you think it's what I need. Hazel forced herself to meet his eyes. But I don't want forced compliments. I don't want you to pretend I'm beautiful because it makes the guilt easier. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? She stood up, needing space. 2 weeks ago, you barely looked at me. Now suddenly I'm beautiful? Now suddenly you notice everything about me. 2 weeks ago, I gave myself permission to look. Cole stood too. There's a difference. What does that even mean? It means I've been trying not to see you. His voice rose with frustration. Because seeing you, really seeing you, means admitting I chose wrong the first time. Means admitting I hurt you. Means accepting that my perfect marriage to Clara wasn't actually perfect at all. Hazel's throat tightened. So this is about Clara? No. Cole crossed the room in 2 strides. This is about me finally being honest. About me finally letting myself see what was right in front of me all along. And what's that? A woman who's stronger than anyone I've ever met, who loves my daughter like she's her own, who keeps this ranch running and never asks for credit, who's been carrying a candle in the darkness for years because nobody else would. His hands gripped her shoulders. You want me to prove I see you? Fine. I see you, Hazel. All of you. And it scares the hell out of me because I don't deserve you. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. The words hung between them, raw and honest, and exactly what Hazel had been afraid to hope for. I don't know how to trust this, she whispered. Then don't. Cole's grip tightened. Not yet, but let me try to earn it. Hazel looked up at him, this man who'd broken her heart and married her out of necessity, and was now asking for a chance to do things right. Okay, she said, finally. But Cole, if you're going to do this, really do it. Don't give me half measures because you feel guilty. Either you're all in or you're not. I'm in. His voice was absolute. I'm all the way in. He kissed her then, and it was different from the kiss on the ridge, deeper, more certain, like a promise being sealed. When they pulled apart, Hazel's knees were weak. Bed, Cole said quietly. Before I forget how to be a gentleman. They went upstairs together, and for the first time since the wedding, Cole pulled Hazel close in the darkness, her back against his chest, his arm around her waist, breathing together in the quiet. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. For what? For giving me another chance, for not giving up on this. He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. For being patient with me while I figure out how to love you properly. Hazel's eyes burned with tears. You're welcome. She fell asleep in his arms, and for the first time in years she didn't dream about being invisible. The next morning brought chaos. Hazel woke to Ellie screaming, Cole cursing, and smoke billowing from somewhere downstairs. She threw on her robe and ran, finding the kitchen filled with gray smoke and Cole beating at a pan with a dish towel while Ellie sobbed in the corner. What happened? Hazel yanked open windows. I was trying to make a breakfast. Cole looked sheepish and furious all at once. Wanted to surprise you, but the bacon... He gestured helplessly at the smoking pan. Papa made fire, Ellie wailed. It's not fire, it's just... Cole stopped as the smoke alarm started shrieking. Hazel grabbed a chair, climbed up, and disconnected the alarm with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been cooking her whole life. Then she took the ruined pan from Cole's hands and surveyed the damage. You burned water, she said. How is that possible? I don't know, but you managed it. She couldn't help the smile tugging at her mouth. Were you trying to boil eggs? I was trying to be romantic. Cole ran a hand through his hair, leaving it standing up in all directions. Thought I'd bring you breakfast in bed. Show you I was trying. Hazel looked at the disaster zone her kitchen had become. The burnt pan, the smoke-stained ceiling, the eggs that had somehow exploded across the stove. Then she started laughing. She couldn't help it. Cole looked so frustrated and Ellie was still dramatically sobbing, and the whole situation was so absurd that laughter just came pouring out. This isn't funny, Cole said, but his mouth was twitching. It's a little funny. Papa tried to kill us with breakfast, Ellie announced with the particular flair of a child who'd learned drama from watching adults. I did not... Cole stopped, looked at Hazel. Okay, it's a little funny. They ended up eating toast at the kitchen table while the house aired out. Cole still sheepish, Ellie recounting the fire with increasing embellishment, and Hazel feeling something warm and unexpected blooming in her chest. This was what real looked like. Messy and imperfect, and nothing like the polished life Clara had maintained. But somehow, it felt more like home than anything before it. After breakfast, Cole went out to work while Hazel cleaned up the kitchen disaster. She was scrubbing burnt egg off the stove when she heard a wagon pull up outside. Through the window, she saw her mother climbing down with her familiar sharp expression. Hazel's stomach dropped. She thought about pretending not to be home, about hiding in the bedroom until her mother gave up and left. But that was the old Hazel, the one who made herself small to avoid conflict. The new Hazel opened the door before her mother could knock. I'm not apologizing, her mother said immediately, if that's what you're waiting for. I'm not waiting for anything. Hazel blocked the doorway. What do you want? To see my granddaughter, unless you've decided to keep her from me too. Ellie's napping, and you didn't come to see her. You came to see if I'd changed my mind about letting you walk all over me. Her mother's eyes narrowed. You've gotten bold. I've gotten tired. Hazel crossed her arms. Tired of being treated like I'm only valuable when I'm useful. Tired of you making me feel small so you can feel big. Tired of pretending it's normal for a mother to talk to her daughter the way you talk to me. I've only ever told you the truth. You've only ever told me your version of the truth. Hazel's voice stayed level. The one where I'm too heavy and too plain and too difficult to love. But you know what? Cole doesn't think that. Ellie doesn't think that. And I'm done thinking it too. Her mother's face went tight. So that's it? You're choosing him over your own family? I'm choosing myself. The words felt powerful coming out. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want instead of what you think I should settle for. And what happens when he realizes you're not Clara, when he wakes up and sees what you really are? The question hit the exact fear Hazel had been carrying. But instead of crumbling, she straightened her spine. Then at least I'll know I was brave enough to try. She met her mother's eyes, which is more than you can say. Her mother drew back like she'd been slapped. How dare you? I dare because I'm done being afraid of you. Hazel's voice shook but held steady. You spent my whole life making me believe I wasn't worth loving, that I should be grateful for scraps. But I deserve more than scraps. And if you can't see that, then you don't get to be part of my life. The silence that followed felt like the moment before a storm breaks. Fine, her mother said coldly, if that's how you want it. It's not how I want it. Hazel's throat tightened. I want a mother who actually loves me, who sees me. But if you can't be that person, then yes, this is how it has to be. Her mother turned and climbed back onto the wagon without another word. Hazel watched her drive away, and she waited for the guilt to hit. It didn't come. Instead, she felt something that might have been relief. Cole found her an hour later sitting on the porch steps, staring at nothing. Saw your mother's wagon leaving, he said, sitting down beside her. Didn't go well. I told her she couldn't come back unless she learned to respect me. Cole was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? Lighter? Hazel looked at him. Is that wrong? Should I feel guilty? You feel how you feel. He took her hand. But for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For what? For standing up for yourself. For knowing your worth. He squeezed her fingers. Took me 4 months of being married to you to see it. About time you saw it too. Hazel's eyes burned. What if she never comes back? Then she's the one missing out. Cole's voice was firm. Not you. They sat there together while the afternoon sun moved across the yard, and Hazel realized something had shifted. Not just with her mother, but inside herself. She was done being the woman nobody chose. She was choosing herself. That evening, after Ellie was asleep, Cole disappeared. Hazel looked for him in the barn, the study, even the guest room he'd abandoned weeks ago. But he wasn't anywhere in the house. She was starting to worry when she noticed light coming from the harvest field. Pulling on her shawl, she walked outside and stopped dead. The entire field was covered in candles. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, their small flames turning the darkness into something that looked like a dream. And standing in the middle of them, looking nervous and determined all at once, was Cole. Hazel walked toward him in a daze, her feet moving without conscious thought. What is this? She breathed. You wrote in your journal that keeping a candle burning made the darkness feel less permanent. Cole's voice was rough. I've been thinking about that, about how many nights you must have sat alone in your room, lighting candles because nobody else would. Hazel's throat closed up. So I called in some favors, Cole continued. Got half the town to help me set this up. Because Hazel, you're not alone anymore, and you're never going to sit in darkness again. Not if I can help it. Tears spilled down Hazel's face. Cole, I know I'm late. He stepped closer, taking her hands. I know I should have seen you years ago. Should have asked your name that first day. Should have chosen you instead of getting distracted by something pretty, but empty. His voice cracked. But I see you now. All of you. And if you'll let me, if you'll give me the chance, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again. Hazel looked around at the field of candles, at the neighbors standing quiet at the edges bearing witness, at this man who'd married her out of necessity but was now choosing her out of something that looked dangerously close to love. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. Cole pulled her closer. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. That doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. He cupped her face with both hands. But it's real, and I'm done pretending real isn't better than perfect. Hazel reached up and covered his hands with hers. Okay. I'll let you love me. The words came out shaky but sure. I'll let you try. And I'll try too. Cole's smile was brilliant and broken all at once. That's all I'm asking. He kissed her there in the field of candles, in front of half the town, and this time there was nothing careful or uncertain about it. This was a man claiming what he wanted, a man choosing her first. When they pulled apart, Hazel was crying and laughing all at once. You're ridiculous, she said. Probably. Cole brushed away her tears. But I'm your ridiculous. Yeah. Hazel smiled through the tears. You are. They stood there surrounded by light, and Hazel finally understood something she'd been too afraid to believe before. She'd never been too large or too plain or too difficult to love. She'd just been waiting for someone who knew how to see her in the dark. And now he was holding her hand, lighting candles in a harvest field, proving that some stories don't start with love at first sight. Some stories start in the dark, and the best ones bring their own light. The candles burned down to stubs before the neighbors finally dispersed, leaving Cole and Hazel alone in the field under a sky so full of stars it looked like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. "We should go in," Hazel said, but she didn't move. "Yeah." Cole's arm tightened around her waist. "We should." Neither of them budged. They stood there breathing together, and Hazel felt something settle inside her chest, something that had been restless and aching for so long she'd forgotten what peace felt like. "Cole?" Her voice came out quiet. "Yeah?" "I love you." The words felt strange on her tongue, too big, too exposed. "I've loved you for so long, I don't remember what it feels like not to." Cole went very still. Then he turned her to face him, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that made her throat tight. "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry it took me so long to deserve it." "You don't have to deserve love. That's not how it works." "Maybe not." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "But I'm going to try anyway." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, Hazel was shaking. "Bed," Cole said roughly. "Now, before I forget, we're standing in the middle of a field where anyone could see." They walked back to the house hand in hand, and this time when they climbed the stairs to the bedroom, something felt different. The careful distance they'd been maintaining was gone. In its place was something raw and honest and slightly terrifying. Cole closed the bedroom door and leaned against it, watching Hazel with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You can change your mind," he said quietly. "If this is too fast, if you're not ready." Hazel thought about all the years she'd spent waiting, all the nights she'd lain awake imagining what it might feel like to be loved by this man. "I'm ready," she said. "Hazel." "I'm ready," she repeated, more firmly this time. "I'm tired of being careful, tired of protecting myself from getting hurt. I want—" She stopped, forced herself to say it. "I want to be your wife, really your wife, in every way that matters." Cole crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." What happened next was nothing like the romance novels Hazel had read in secret as a girl. It was awkward in places, fumbling and uncertain. Cole was nervous, his hand shaking as he helped her out of her dress. Hazel knocked over the lamp trying to get closer. They laughed at inappropriate moments and had to stop twice when Ellie called out from her room. But it was real. And when Cole looked down at Hazel with wonder in his eyes and whispered that she was beautiful, that she'd always been beautiful, and he'd been a fool not to see it, she finally believed him. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, sweaty and breathless and utterly content. That was... Cole stopped, started again. If you say perfect, I'm going to hit you." Hazel's voice was muffled against his chest. "I was going to say unexpected." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "In the best possible way." Hazel smiled against his skin. "Yeah?" "Yeah." His arm tightened around her. "I kept thinking about how I'd imagined this would be. But it's better, because it's you." Smooth talker. "I mean it." Cole pulled back enough to look at her. Being with Clara it was like performing a role. Everything had to be perfect, romantic. She'd get upset if I wasn't gentle enough or didn't say the right things. His voice went quiet. "But with you, it just feels like what? Like coming home." Hazel's eyes burned with tears. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'll start believing you actually love me." "Good." Cole cupped her face. "Because I do." The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and exactly what Hazel had been afraid to hope for. "You don't have to say that just because I'm not saying it because we had sex." Cole's voice was firm. "I'm saying it because it's true. Because I've been falling in love with you for months and was too stubborn to admit it. Because you're brave and kind and real in ways I didn't know I needed." He kissed her forehead. "Because you're Hazel, and that's more than enough. Hazel started crying then, ugly, messy tears that came from someplace deep and wounded inside her. Cole held her through it, didn't try to fix it or make it stop, just held her while she cried out years of believing she wasn't worth loving. And when she finally quieted, he wiped her face with the edge of the sheet and smiled at her like she'd just given him a gift. "Better?" he asked. "I don't know." Hazel's voice came out rough. "Ask me in the morning." "I will." He pulled her close again. "I'll ask you every morning for the rest of our lives." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, hearts beating in sync, and for the first time since the wedding, Hazel didn't wonder if she was a replacement or a second choice. She was just Hazel, and that was finally enough. Winter came early that year, bringing snow that piled high against the fence posts and ice that made the roads impassable for weeks at a time. The ranch settled into a quiet rhythm, Cole working the livestock, Hazel managing the house, Ellie growing bigger and bolder every day. But something had shifted in the foundation of their marriage. Cole no longer treated Hazel like she was fragile. He argued with her about ranch decisions, trusted her judgment on things that mattered, pulled her into his lap while they read by the fire, and kissed her senseless just because he could. And Hazel stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. She stopped expecting him to wake up and realize he'd made a mistake. Stopped comparing herself to Clara's memory. Stopped making herself small so other people could feel big. She took up space, and it felt good. "You're different," Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon when Hazel came into town for supplies. "Happier." "Maybe," Hazel smiled. "Or maybe I'm just finally letting myself be happy." "It's about time." Mrs. Patterson patted her hand. "You deserve good things, Hazel Bennett. Always did." The name still felt strange. Hazel Bennett, like wearing a coat that had been tailored for someone else but somehow fit her better. When she got back to the ranch, she found Cole in the barn repairing a broken stall door, while Ellie helped by handing him nails one at a time. "Mama Hazel!" Ellie launched herself across the barn. "We're fixing things!" "I can see that." Hazel caught her and swung her up. "Are you being helpful?" "Very helpful," Cole said seriously. "Best assistant I've ever had." Ellie beamed. They worked together until sunset, Cole fixing the door, Hazel organizing the tack room she'd been meaning to sort for months, Ellie playing in the hay and narrating an elaborate story about horses and dragons that made no sense but was utterly charming. This was family, Hazel realized. Not the perfect, polished version her mother had always demanded, just three people working side by side, making each other laugh, building something real out of broken pieces. That night, after Ellie was asleep, Cole found Hazel in the study going over the ranch accounts. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know, but I'm good at it." She didn't look up from the ledger. "And you're terrible at it." "True." He came up behind her chair and started massaging her shoulders. "Find anything interesting?" "We could afford to hire another hand for spring planting, and maybe fix the south fence before it falls down completely." Cole's hands stilled. "You've been thinking about this." "I've been living here for 6 months. Of course I've been thinking about it." "No, I mean—" He turned her chair so she faced him. "You've been thinking about the future. About staying." Hazel's heart skipped. "Did you think I was going to leave?" "I thought—" He stopped, started over. "I thought maybe once you realized you didn't have to stay anymore, you'd want something different. Someone different." The vulnerability in his voice made Hazel's chest ache. "Cole Bennett." She stood and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I chose you, not because I had to, not because it was practical, but because I wanted to." She kissed him softly. "And I'm going to keep choosing you, every single day, until you get sick of me." "Never going to happen." "You say that now. Wait until I reorganize your tool shed." Cole laughed and pulled her closer. "Reorganize whatever you want. This is your ranch too." The word settled something inside Hazel. Not just the ranch, the life, the future. All of it was hers to claim. "Okay," she said. "Then I'm putting in a garden come spring, a big one, with vegetables and herbs and maybe some flowers. Whatever you want. And I'm repainting the kitchen. That yellow makes me feel like I'm inside a lemon." "Done." "And I'm getting chickens, at least a dozen." Cole pulled back to look at her. "Chickens?" "Fresh eggs, and Ellie will love them." Hazel's eyes sparkled. Unless you have a problem with chickens? I have a problem with you asking permission to make this place feel like home. His voice went soft. It's your home, Hazel. Make it whatever you want. She kissed him then, deep and thorough and full of gratitude for this man who'd learned how to love her properly. Thank you, she whispered against his mouth. For what? For seeing me. Cole's arms tightened around her. Always. Spring came late, but when it finally arrived, it transformed the ranch. Hazel's garden went in, neat rows of vegetables and herbs, with flowers bordering the edges just because they were pretty. The chickens arrived, and Ellie promptly named every single one after characters from her favorite stories. Cole repainted the kitchen a soft cream color that made the whole room feel bigger and brighter. And slowly, the house stopped feeling like Clara's place and became theirs. One evening in early May, Hazel was kneading bread dough when she heard a wagon pull up outside. Through the window, she saw her mother climbing down, looking older than Hazel remembered. Her stomach clenched. They hadn't spoken in almost 7 months, not since the day Hazel had told her to leave. Cole appeared in the kitchen doorway. Want me to send her away? Hazel thought about it, how easy it would be to let Cole handle this, to hide behind her husband and avoid the confrontation. But she'd spent too many years hiding. No, she said. I'll talk to her. She wiped the flour from her hands and walked outside. Her mother stood by the wagon, clutching her bag like a shield. I didn't think you'd see me, her mother said. I almost didn't. Hazel crossed her arms. What do you want? To apologize. The words hit Hazel like a physical blow. In 27 years, she'd never heard her mother apologize for anything. For what, specifically? Hazel kept her voice level. Because there's a lot to choose from. Her mother flinched. For making you feel like you weren't enough. For treating you like you were only valuable when you were useful. Her voice cracked. For not seeing how much I was hurting you. Hazel waited. Years of experience had taught her that her mother's apologies usually came with conditions. I'm not asking you to forgive me, her mother continued. I don't deserve that. But I wanted you to know. She stopped. Took a shaky breath. When you told me to leave, I was angry. Furious, actually. Thought you were being dramatic and ungrateful. Sounds about right. But then I went home to an empty house, and I realized... Her mother's hands twisted in her bag. I realized I'd spent so much time trying to make Clara perfect that I forgot to love you properly. And now Clara's gone, and you're here. And I've lost both my daughters because I was too proud to admit I was wrong. Hazel's throat tightened. You didn't lose Clara because of pride, she died. But I lost you because of it. Her mother met her eyes. And I don't know how to fix that. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of hurt and misunderstanding. You can't, Hazel said finally. You can't fix it. Not completely, because the damage is done, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen just to make you feel better. Her mother nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. But, Hazel continued, her voice softening slightly, if you're willing to actually try, to see me as I am instead of what you think I should be, then maybe we can build something new. I want that. Her mother's voice was desperate. I want to know my daughter, the real one. Then you should probably know that I'm stubborn and opinionated, and I'm never going to be the kind of daughter who asks your permission for things. A small smile tugged at her mother's mouth. I'm starting to figure that out. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to be angry sometimes. I'm going to set boundaries that you won't like. I understand. Do you? Hazel stepped closer. Because this isn't me backing down. This is me giving you one chance to do better. And if you can't, if you fall back into the old patterns, then we're done. Permanently. Her mother nodded. I understand, and I'll try. I promise, I'll try. Hazel studied her mother's face, looking for signs of manipulation or false promises. But all she saw was an old woman who'd finally realized what her pride had cost her. Okay, Hazel said quietly. Come inside. Meet your granddaughter properly. Have coffee, and we'll see how it goes. Her mother's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. They walked inside together, and Cole took one look at Hazel's expression and quietly disappeared to give them space. Ellie was less subtle. She stared at the stranger with open suspicion until Hazel introduced her properly. "This is your grandmother," Hazel said. "My mother." "The mean one Papa said we don't talk about?" Ellie asked with the brutal honesty of a 3-year-old. Hazel's mother went white. "He said that?" "He said you made Mama Hazel sad," Ellie continued, "and people who make Mama Hazel sad don't get cookies." Despite everything, Hazel had to bite back a smile. "Ellie, that's enough. But why don't you show grandmother your chickens? I bet she's never seen chickens named after storybook characters." Ellie's face lit up. She grabbed Hazel's mother's hand and dragged her toward the back door, chattering about Princess Feathersworth and Sir Clux-a-Lot, and Hazel watched them go with something complicated twisting in her chest. This wouldn't fix everything. Years of damage didn't heal overnight, but it was a start. Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You okay?" "I don't know yet." Hazel leaned back against his chest. "Ask me tomorrow." "I will." He kissed the side of her neck. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For being brave enough to try." They stood there watching through the window as Ellie introduced her grandmother to the chickens, and Hazel felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. That night, after her mother left with promises to visit again soon, Hazel sat on the porch steps and let herself cry. Not sad tears or angry ones, just the complicated grief that came from realizing that some relationships would always be broken, but broken didn't mean they had to stay that way. Cole found her there and sat down without speaking, just took her hand and held it while she cried. And when she finally quieted, he said, "You don't have to forgive her, you know. Not if you're not ready." "I know." Hazel wiped her face. "But I want to try. Not for her, for me. Because holding on to that anger, it's exhausting." "Then try." Cole pulled her closer. "But do it on your terms, not hers." "When did you get so wise?" "Since I married a woman who won't let me get away with being stupid." Hazel smiled despite the tears. "Lucky you." "Luckiest man alive," Cole said seriously. "And I mean that." Summer came in hot and heavy, turning the fields golden and filling the house with the smell of Hazel's garden vegetables. She canned tomatoes and pickles, made jam from wild berries Ellie helped pick, hung herbs to dry in the kitchen until the whole house smelled like rosemary and thyme. The ranch prospered under their joint management, Cole handling the livestock and heavy labor, Hazel managing the books and planning for the future. They hired 2 ranch hands for the busy season, and Hazel surprised everyone by negotiating their wages up because paying people fairly means they'll actually stick around. The town gossip shifted from speculation about whether the marriage would last to grudging respect for how well Hazel had taken charge. Mrs. Patterson told anyone who'd listen that Hazel Bennett was the smartest thing to happen to that ranch in years. Mr. Chen started asking her advice on his own business accounts, and Cole watched it all with something that looked like pride. "You're staring again," Hazel said one evening as they sat on the porch watching Ellie chase fireflies. "Can't help it." Cole's arm was around her shoulders. "You're something to look at." "I'm sweaty and covered in garden dirt." "Like I said, something to look at." Hazel rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "You're ridiculous." "You love it." "Unfortunately." She leaned into his shoulder. "I really do." They sat there until the stars came out, and Ellie finally wore herself out chasing bugs. Cole carried their daughter inside while Hazel locked up the chickens, and when they met upstairs, Ellie was already half asleep. "Mama Hazel?" Ellie's voice was drowsy. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "I love you more than Princess Feathersworth." Hazel's throat tightened. Coming from Ellie, that was the highest compliment possible. "I love you too, baby." "And Papa loves you too. He told me." Hazel glanced at Cole, who suddenly looked very interested in the floor. "Did he now?" "Uh-huh. He said you're his favorite person in the whole world." Ellie yawned. "Even more than his horse." "High praise," Hazel said solemnly. Cole's ears were red. "All right, little bit. Time for sleep." They tucked Ellie in together, and when they got to their own room, Hazel turned to Cole with raised eyebrows. "More than your horse?" she asked. "It was a private conversation," Cole muttered, "with a 3-year-old who repeats everything." "I'm aware." He pulled her into his arms. "But it's true. You are my favorite person." even more than Ranger. I'm honored. Hazel's voice was dry, but her eyes were soft. Though I have to say, being ranked above a horse really sets the bar high. Cole laughed and kissed her. Smart ass. You love it. I really do. They fell into bed together, and what started as playful teasing turned into something deeper. Afterward, Cole held Hazel close and said, I want another baby. Hazel went very still. What? A baby. With you. He pulled back to look at her face. I want Ellie to have a sibling. I want to build a family with you that's ours from the beginning. Cole, go. You don't have to decide right now, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know I've been thinking about it, about a future where it's not just fixing what broke, where we're building something new together. Hazel's heart was beating so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. She thought about it, about a baby with Cole's dark hair and her freckles, about Ellie being a big sister, about this family they were building, getting bigger and stronger and more real. Okay, she whispered. I'll think about it. Cole's smile was brilliant. He kissed her again, slow and sweet, and Hazel felt something settle into place inside her chest. This was her life now. Not the one she'd dreamed about as a girl hiding in corners. Something better. Something real. 3 months later, Hazel stood in the kitchen making breakfast and felt the familiar wave of nausea that confirmed what she'd suspected for weeks. She was pregnant. The realization hit her like lightning, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She pressed a hand to her still flat stomach and let herself imagine it. A baby. Cole's baby. Theirs. You all right? Cole appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day's work. You look pale. I'm fine. The words came out automatically. Then she stopped, corrected herself. Actually, I'm not fine. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Cole crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. You're sure? His voice was rough against her hair. Pretty sure. I've been sick every morning for 2 weeks. Cole pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. His eyes were shining. We're having a baby. We're having a baby, Hazel confirmed, and saying it out loud made it feel real in a way it hadn't before. Cole kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of joy, and when he pulled away he was grinning like a fool. I love you, he said. I love you so damn much. I love you too. Hazel's voice cracked. Even though you're probably going to be insufferable about this. Absolutely insufferable, Cole agreed. I'm going to tell everyone. I'm going to build a crib with my bare hands. You're going to let me finish breakfast before I pass out, Hazel interrupted. And then you're going to go work like a normal person and not announce this to the whole county before I'm ready. Cole's grin didn't fade. Yes, ma'am. But he couldn't stop touching her, his hand on her back as she cooked, his fingers laced through hers at breakfast, his palm resting gently on her stomach like he could already feel the baby growing there. When Ellie came downstairs and demanded to know why everyone was so happy, Cole looked at Hazel with a question in his eyes. Hazel nodded. You're going to be a big sister, Cole told Ellie. Mama Hazel has a baby in her tummy. Ellie's eyes went wide. A real baby? A real baby. Can I name it? Absolutely not, Hazel and Cole said in unison. Ellie pouted, but she was already chattering about all the things she'd teach the baby and how she'd share her chickens and whether the baby would like stories about dragons. Hazel watched her and felt something bloom in her chest, warm and bright and terrifyingly fragile. This was her family, the one she'd built from broken pieces and second chances and the stubborn refusal to believe she wasn't worth loving. The pregnancy was hard. Hazel was sick for months, exhausted all the time, her body changing in ways that made her feel clumsy and awkward. But Cole was there for all of it, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her swollen feet at night, telling her she was beautiful even when she felt like a whale. You're just saying that, Hazel said one evening, 7 months pregnant and miserable. I'm not. Cole's hands were gentle on her stomach, feeling the baby kick. You're growing our child. Nothing's more beautiful than that. I can't see my own feet. I'll look at them for you, he grinned. They're very nice feet. Hazel threw a pillow at him. But that night, When she couldn't sleep because the baby was using her ribs as a punching bag, Cole stayed awake with her. He read to her from the books she loved, made her tea, talked about plans for the nursery they were setting up in what used to be the guest room. "What if I'm not good at this?" Hazel asked quietly. "What if I'm a terrible mother?" Cole looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Have you met Ellie? That kid worships you. You're already the best mother I know." "That's different. Ellie was already here. I didn't have to." She gestured helplessly at her stomach. "I didn't have to do this part." "You're scared." Cole pulled her close. "That's normal." "I'm terrified," Hazel admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not—" "Then we'll handle it together." His voice was firm. "Whatever happens, you're not alone. Not anymore." The baby came on a cold February morning after 16 hours of labor that left Hazel exhausted and sweaty and absolutely certain she was going to die. "I can't," she gasped. "I can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can." Cole's hand was locked with hers, his voice steady even though his face was pale. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." "I hate you for getting me pregnant." "I know. You can hate me later. Right now you need to push." So she pushed and screamed and swore at Cole in language that would have made her mother faint. And then suddenly there was a baby crying, loud and healthy and perfect, and the doctor was placing a tiny red-faced infant in Hazel's arms. "It's a boy," the doctor announced. Hazel stared down at her son, this tiny person she'd grown inside her body, and felt something crack wide open in her chest. "Hello, you," she whispered. The baby blinked up at her with dark eyes that looked just like Cole's, and Hazel fell completely, irrevocably in love. Cole was crying, actually crying, tears streaming down his face as he looked at their son. "He's perfect," Cole said roughly. "Hazel, he's perfect." "We made this," Hazel said in wonder. "We actually made a whole person." "We did." Cole kissed her forehead, then the baby's. "You did. You're amazing." They named him Thomas Cole Bennett, after Cole's father. Tommy for short. And when they brought him home 3 days later, Ellie took one look at her baby brother and declared him kind of wrinkly, but acceptable. The ranch settled into a new rhythm, punctuated by Tommy's cries and Ellie's constant chatter and the particular exhaustion that came from caring for a newborn. Hazel was tired all the time, her body still recovering, her emotions all over the place. But Cole was there for all of it. He changed diapers and walked the floor with Tommy at 3 in the morning and took Ellie out to the barn so Hazel could nap. He made her laugh when she was crying from exhaustion and held her when she broke down from the overwhelm of it all. "I don't know how you did this alone," Hazel said one night when Tommy had finally fallen asleep after hours of fussing. "With Ellie, after Clara died." "I didn't do it alone," Cole's voice was quiet. "You were there. You saved us both. That was different." "Was it?" He looked at her. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've been saving me since the day we got married. Maybe before." Hazel's throat tightened. "I wasn't trying to save anyone. I was just being you." Cole pulled her close. And that was enough. Spring came again, and with it, the 1-year anniversary of the night Cole had filled the field with candles. Hazel woke that morning to find him already gone, and when she went downstairs, she found a note on the kitchen table. "Meet me in the field at sunset. Ellie knows the plan. Love, C." Hazel's heart skipped. She went through the day in a daze, taking care of Tommy, helping Ellie with her chores, wondering what Cole had planned. As the sun started to sink, Ellie appeared with a knowing grin. "Time to go see Papa," she announced. "I'll watch Tommy. Mrs. Patterson's coming to help." "Ellie, you're 4 years old. You can't—" "Mrs. Patterson's already here." Ellie pointed to the window. "Go, before you miss it." So Hazel went. She walked out to the harvest field as the sun painted the sky pink and gold, and stopped dead. The field wasn't full of candles this time. It was full of flowers. Hundreds of them. Wildflowers Cole must have spent weeks gathering and planting, their colors bright against the green grass. And in the middle of them stood Cole, holding a small box. Hazel walked toward him with her heart in her throat. "What is this?" she breathed. "I married you in a courthouse," Cole said. "No ceremony, no witnesses, no celebration, because I thought it was just practical, just solving a problem." Cole, but it wasn't. He opened the box, revealing a ring, delicate gold with a small diamond that caught the light. It was the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me. And you deserve better than a courthouse wedding and a ring I guessed the size on. Hazel's vision blurred with tears. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Cole took her hand. But I want to. Hazel Bennett, will you marry me? Again? Properly this time? We're already married. I know. But I want to do it right. I want to stand in front of everyone we know and choose you, out loud. So there's no question. So everyone knows, including you, that you're not second choice. You're not a replacement. You're the woman I love. The only one I want. Hazel was full on crying now. Yes, yes, you ridiculous man. I'll marry you again. Cole slipped the ring on her finger, and this time it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her there in the field of flowers while the sun set behind them, and Hazel felt something settle into place that she hadn't even known was still broken. They got married again on a Saturday in June, not in a courthouse this time, but in the small church at the edge of town with everyone they knew watching. Hazel wore a simple cream dress that Clara never would have chosen, practical and comfortable and perfectly her. Ellie was flower girl. Tommy slept through the whole ceremony in Mrs. Patterson's arms. And when the minister asked if Cole took Hazel to be his wife, he said, I do, in a voice that carried to the back of the church. When he asked Hazel the same question, she looked at Cole, this man who'd taken 5 years and a dead wife to see her properly, who'd learned how to love her the way she deserved, who'd given her a family and a home and a life she'd stopped believing was possible, and said I do like she meant it, because she did. The reception was held at the ranch, tables set up in the yard, food Hazel had spent days preparing, music and laughter and joy that felt real and earned. Hazel's mother came. They were still working on their relationship, still careful with each other, still learning how to be mother and daughter without the old patterns. But she was there. And when she hugged Hazel and whispered, you look beautiful, Hazel almost believed her. That night, after everyone left and the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Cole found Hazel sitting on the porch steps looking at her new ring. Tired? He asked. Exhausted. She smiled up at him, but happy. Cole sat beside her and pulled her close. Me too. They sat there in the darkness, and Hazel thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, standing in the back of a church serving coffee at her sister's wedding, believing she'd never be chosen, never be seen, never be enough. That girl would never recognize the woman Hazel had become, the one who'd learned to take up space, to demand respect, to believe she was worth loving not because she was useful, but because she was herself. What are you thinking about? Cole asked. How far we've come. Hazel laced her fingers through his. How different everything is. Better different? So much better. She turned to kiss him. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For choosing me. For proving that sometimes the best love stories start in the dark and bring their own light. Cole pulled her closer. I love you, Hazel Bennett. I love you too. She rested her head on his shoulder. Even though you burned water trying to make me breakfast. That was one time. It was memorable. They sat there laughing softly in the darkness, and inside the house, Tommy started to cry. Cole stood and held out his hand. Our son needs us, he said. Our son, Hazel repeated, still marveling at those words. Our family. Our family, Cole agreed, the one we built together. They walked inside hand in hand, and Hazel realized something she'd spent years not believing. She wasn't the woman nobody chose anymore. She was the woman who'd learned to choose herself. And in doing that, she'd found something better than being picked first. She'd found someone who chose her every single day. Not because he had to, not because it was practical, but because loving Hazel Bennett, the real one, messy and imperfect and exactly who she was the easiest decision he'd ever made. And that, Hazel thought, as she picked up her crying son and felt Cole's arm around her waist, was worth waiting for. Some stories don't start with love at first sight. Some start with being overlooked and underestimated and told you're not enough. But those stories, the ones that begin in darkness, teach you something the fairy tales never do. They teach you that being chosen is nice, but choosing yourself is everything. They teach you that real love isn't about being perfect. It's about being seen. And they teach you that sometimes the best endings come from the worst beginnings, because only by standing in the dark do you learn to light your own candles. Hazel had spent 5 years loving a man who didn't see her, and now she'd spend the rest of her life being loved by a man who couldn't look away. Not because she'd changed, but because he'd finally learned how to see. And in the end, that made all the difference.